My neighbor kept parking in my spot, so I got creative. So I come home one Thursday evening after a brutal 12-hour slog at work, dragging my soul through spreadsheets and meetings that could have been emails, dreaming only of collapsing onto my couch with a cold beer and maybe some dignity intact. You know the kind of day where your brain checks out at 2 p.m., but your boss doesn't. Yeah, that was me. I pull into the apartment complex parking lot, the one I've lived in for 3 years, where every spot has a number, every resident has a spot, and every morning I fight a silent, petty war with the universe just to get the one that's mine. My spot is hash 24, third from the end, right next to the corner where the sun hits just right and makes the car's interior feel like a furnace in summer. It's perfect. And more importantly, it's mine. Or at least it used to be. Today, hash 24 is occupied. And it's not just some random visitor or guest who made a mistake. No, it's Brad. Brad, the guy who just moved in 2 weeks ago, yet somehow has already decided he owns my spot more than I do. His car is a shiny black SUV. Probably the most obnoxious vehicle I've ever seen in this parking lot, complete with tinted windows that scream, I am better than everyone. I stop the car mid-lot and just stare. Blink once, twice. Maybe my eyes are deceiving me. Maybe it's a mirage. But no, that chrome grille, those oversized rims, the audacity. It's him, sitting there smugly, or at least that's how I imagine he looks through the tint. Now, I pride myself on being a chill person. Really, I avoid conflict like it's an IRS audit. But parking is sacred. Parking is life. Parking is mine. So I step out, and in that moment, I'm equal parts furious and bewildered. I notice my neighbors walking by, subtly watching me, probably expecting a meltdown. I take a deep breath. I remind myself, politeness first. I walk over to the SUV, tap lightly on the window. No response, obviously. I knock a bit louder. Still nothing. I wave at the figure inside, or rather, I gesture like, hey, you're in my spot. Nothing. Okay, first rule of adulting, document everything. So I whip out my phone and snap a picture, mostly for insurance reasons, but also because I know Reddit would lose it if I posted about this. I slip a polite note under the windshield wiper. Something calm, reasonable, the kind of note that screams, hey neighbor, I understand mistakes happen, but this is my spot. Could you please park elsewhere? I even drew a little smiley face because I'm nice like that. Next day, I come home, and guess who's in hash 24 again? Brad. This time, I swear he's smirking. I can't prove it through the tinted windows, but I feel it. Now, let's talk about Brad for a second. Brad is the kind of guy who moves in, parks like he owns the entire complex, and probably thinks apartment rules are optional. He leaves trash in the hallway, plays music like he's hosting Coachella, and smells faintly of protein powder and arrogance. But my focus? My spot. So I decide to escalate slightly. I leave another note, this one less smiley, more direct. Brad, this is my spot. If you park here again, I will have no choice but to escalate this matter with management. The next day, I come home to find a note on my own car. Yeah, my car, not his. It says, and I quote, chill dude, it's just a spot. Don't be so uptight. Oh, no. That's it. That's the line. That's the moment I realize that we are entering uncharted territory. So I start thinking creatively, because if Brad thinks he can just waltz into my assigned spot and leave snarky notes on my car, he's about to learn that I'm resourceful. First, I try the subtle psychological approach. I leave sticky notes on his SUV. Smile, you're in the wrong spot. I don't know why I thought this would work. Maybe I was still hopeful. Maybe I was delusional. Either way, it gets ignored. Then I try passive-aggressive humor. I print a laminated sign. Hash 24, Alex's spot. Violators will be judged mercilessly. I leave it leaning against the SUV when he's out. That did not go well. Brad laughs like I'm the punchline. I start keeping track. I call it my spot journal. Every day I note, Brad parked here. Note left, mood, frustrated. Next action plan, TBD. It's pathetic. And I know it, but also strangely satisfying. Then I hit on an idea, something borderline genius, or borderline insane. One of the two. I buy a small motion sensor light and stick it under my car. Whenever someone parks in my spot, it flashes, blares, or makes some weird noise. I feel like a secret agent. I feel like Batman. I feel like the apartment complex has finally found its hero. Brad comes home. SUV slides in, hits the sensor. A loud, obnoxious beep explodes from under my car. Brad jumps, drops his coffee, nearly shatters the front bumper against his own tires. He looks around. Confused, threatened, angry. Perfect. He leaves a note, another one. This time it says, seriously dude, grow up. I can't tell if I'm proud or unhinged. Probably both. This goes on for a few days. My creativity escalates. Sticky notes become tape outlines of tire tracks. I leave little harmless caution cones around his car. I even put googly eyes on his rear bumper because apparently I'm now cartoonishly obsessed. Neighbors start noticing. Some chuckle, some shake their heads. Some probably think I'm a little nuts. But you know what? I don't care. Because this isn't just about a parking spot anymore. This is about principle, justice, order in the universe. Brad, meanwhile, seems to enjoy it. Or at least he doesn't stop. He parks like a king in his kingdom, smugly looking around, probably thinking he's outsmarted me. Little does he know I thrive on escalation. I'm like a cat now, slowly circling, plotting, ready to pounce. And that's when I decide it's time to get creative. Not passive aggressive sticky notes or annoying lights. I'm talking psychological warfare. I'm talking strategies that will make him question every life choice that led him to park in my spot. I start leaving subtle traps, fake tickets, decoy cones, and the occasional reserved sign for events that don't exist. I even consider writing a fake eviction notice from management. That's the level we're entering. Brad remains blissfully unaware. Or maybe he's aware and he's enjoying the game. Either way, it fuels me. My spot journal grows thicker. I start tracking patterns. When he leaves, when he arrives, how long he parks, what coffee he drinks, what music plays in the SUV. Yes, I have officially become that neighbor. And yet, I can't stop. There's a thrill in this. Every beat from the sensor, every note dropped, every tiny psychological victory. It's exhilarating. Suddenly, a mundane parking issue has become my full-time obsession. One night, I catch him in the act. I hide behind a bush like a suburban ninja. He pulls in, turns off the car, smugly grabs his gym bag, and doesn't even glance at the chaos I've left. That's when I decide it's time to step it up. This isn't just about a spot anymore. It's about pride. It's about sending a message. It's about ensuring that Brad, the new guy with his shiny black SUV in zero respect, never dares to park in my territory again. So I start planning. I sketch diagrams. I list strategies. I consider allies. Maybe other neighbors are quietly annoyed too. Maybe I can recruit a small army of apartment dwellers, all working toward the same noble goal, reclaiming hash 24. I sleep that night dreaming not of spreadsheets or beers, but of victory. Of watching Brad approach his SUV and feeling the delicious satisfaction of him realizing he messed with the wrong neighbor. By the end of it, the scene is set. Brad thinks he's untouchable. I've realized I'm creative, cunning, and possibly a little unhinged. The war is on, and I've only just begun. Because this isn't just a parking spot. This is my spot, and I'm about to prove it. So, after the great sensor incident of last week, I realized something critical. Polite notes and flashing lights were cute, but they weren't enough. Brad had survived my early attempts at subtle psychological manipulation unscathed, like some smug villain in a low-budget sitcom. I needed to escalate. I needed strategy. I needed creative warfare. I spent that weekend in full operational mode. I cleaned out a drawer in my apartment and designated it the war cabinet. In it, I stored sticky notes, a roll of caution tape, chalk, a small bag of glitter, don't ask, and a pack of fake tickets I ordered off Amazon. My battle plan? To make every approach to my parking spot an emotional roller coaster for Brad. Subtle, harmless, yet humiliating enough that he might reconsider his life choices. My first operation was simple. The tire chalk deception. I chalked an outline around his tires in the dead of night, just enough to make it look like the parking enforcement had been paying attention. I even drew little arrows pointing at his car with words like illegal and guilty in bold letters. The next morning, I watched from my balcony with binoculars. Brad arrives. He stares. He crouches. He picks up the chalk outline like it's a crime scene, and then laughs. Full-on, smug, condescending laugh. He takes a picture and walks inside. Okay, back to the drawing board. Lesson 1. Brad is either an idiot or evil incarnate, possibly both. Next, I tried the sticky note barrage. I placed them meticulously all over his windshield, mirrors, and door handles. Little motivational notes. You can do better. This isn't your spot, remember? Smile. It's illegal to park here. I left a few that were more sarcastic. Brad, maybe try teleporting your car next time? Neighbors began to notice. Mrs. Patel from Hash, 26, peeked from her balcony, shaking her head, muttering something about kids these days. I waved innocently. No one could know that I was orchestrating a full-scale operation in broad daylight. The sticky notes worked for about 2 hours. Brad returned, peeled them all off, and left a single note of his own. You've got issues? Chill. That note hung in my war cabinet for inspiration. It was my new enemy's manifesto. After this, I moved to fake car decals. I bought little magnetic signs that said things like, reserved for residents who follow rules, and caution, spot under surveillance. I placed one on his driver's side door when he was out. When he returned, I hid behind my car, watching through the windshield. Brad stared at it. Then he stared at me. Then he laughed again, this time pointing at me like I was the punchline in some cosmic joke. This man had the audacity to be smug about being pranked. It was at that point I knew I needed a system. My war cabinet became a war room. I bought a notebook, labeled it the Spot Journal, and began documenting every interaction. Dates, times, types of pranks, Brad's reactions, notes on his behavior, weather conditions, coffee brand if visible, don't ask why, and my level of satisfaction. By the end of the week, my Spot Journal looked like a tactical operations manual. I was starting to think I could run a full military campaign with this level of detail. The pranks escalated. I started planting small caution cones around his car, the cheap plastic ones from a dollar store, and even left tiny flags that read, "Property of Alex violators will be judged." I considered sprinkling glitter in his tire treads, but figured that might be a bit too much. One morning, I set up my reverse sticky note trap. I stuck a note on the inside of his windshield so he wouldn't see it until he started driving. It read, "Smile. You're being watched." I didn't anticipate that the wind would blow it into his lap before he even got in. He glared at me from the sidewalk like I had personally insulted his entire existence. Neighbors saw it. I got a thumbs up from two teenagers who probably thought I was filming a prank video. By now, I was obsessed. I knew the exact times he left for work, the angle he preferred for his parallel parking attempts, and the soundtrack he listened to while doing it. My war journal had become a living, breathing document of our escalating absurdity. And then came the escalation of escalation. Brad started to notice the patterns. He left passive-aggressive notes in response to my traps. Cute, try harder next time. Or maybe leave your energy for something productive. I realized I needed something psychological, something that would make him second-guess his very soul. I tried leaving fake parking tickets from apartment management with official-looking stamps. At first he panicked, then he laughed when he realized they were fake, and I caught him on camera doing a little victory dance. At this point, I was no longer just defending my spot. I was conducting social experiments, analyzing Brad's reactions, and charting escalation patterns like a mad scientist. One of my more ambitious pranks involved an elaborate setup of sticky notes forming an arrow pointing from his car to my spot, accompanied by a trail of confetti I scattered in the middle of the night. The idea was simple: lead him, emotionally, to my spot. Make him feel the universe conspiring against him. It worked partially. He arrived, stared at the confetti trail, looked at the notes, and muttered something under his breath like, "What the hell is wrong with this guy?" Then he parked elsewhere. Victory? Yes, but only temporary. Neighbors were now starting to whisper. "Is Alex okay?" Mrs. Patel asked, peeking over her balcony. I waved cheerfully while secretly planning my next move, Operation Rearview Panic, which involved a harmless fog machine aimed to create a sudden mist around the car whenever he parked in my spot. The tension between maintaining neighborly civility and my borderline obsession was palpable. I still greeted Brad politely in the hallway, nodded at him when our paths crossed, smiled when management passed by, but every interaction was now laced with subtext, strategy, and hidden threats. And here's the funny part. I started enjoying it. Not the parking problem itself, but the game of wits. Every failed prank became a learning opportunity. Every note he left me became a case study. I was evolving, growing into a master tactician in the ancient art of suburban warfare. I even caught myself smiling, holding my spot journal at night, reviewing the week's events, analyzing his patterns like a chess grandmaster, studying an opponent. My caffeine intake went up, my Netflix consumption went down, my sense of reality slightly skewed. By the end of the chapter, the situation is clear. Brad is cunning in his own right, clever enough to dodge my simpler tactics, but he is not prepared for what's coming. I, Alex, have leveled up. I have become inventive, patient, strategic, and slightly unhinged. The war is no longer about a parking spot. It's about dominance, principle, and the satisfaction of bending fate in my favor. And while Brad probably thinks he's winning, or at least surviving, he has no idea that the real game is just beginning. I'm already sketching my next moves, designing my next operations, and planning the ultimate psychological siege that will make him regret every illegal inch he's ever parked in. This is no longer a feud. This is creative warfare, and I intend to win. I should have known it was coming. I should have seen it in the way Brad glanced at me in the hallway that Thursday morning, his smug little smirk like a shark sensing blood in the water. But no, I was too busy reveling in my victories. The confetti trail, the sticky note arrows, the fog machine setup. I thought I was untouchable. Then it happened. I arrived home after work, already running through my mental checklist. Is my spot clear? Did my motion sensor survive the day? Did my traps work? And found something new. Something insidious. Brad's car was there, yes, but not in the usual arrogance of a newcomer style. No, this time, he had left a pile of miscellaneous items in front of my car. A potted plant, a gym bag, a half-empty water bottle, and a slightly crumpled magazine. It was like he was daring me to move them myself. And here's the kicker. When I tried to drive in, the gym bag had shifted just enough to scratch my bumper slightly. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make my blood boil. That was Operation Misdirection. Executed perfectly by Brad. Now the war had officially escalated. Brad wasn't just parking in my spot anymore. He was actively sabotaging me. My creative traps had turned into his personal invitation to retaliate. I had unleashed a beast, and now I was dealing with it. I spent that night pacing my apartment, staring at my spot journal like it held the answers to life, the universe, and everything. Brad's moves weren't random. They were strategic, calculated. He knew my style, my tendencies. He was smart, too smart. But I had something he didn't. Creativity, patience, and a borderline obsession that was unmatched in suburban history. The next day, I started implementing what I later labeled Phase 2, psychological mind games. My first move was simple yet sinister. I left a set of fake parking tickets, but this time, they were personalized. Not just illegal parking, but to Brad, this is your final warning. The universe is watching you. I made sure to place them where he couldn't miss them. Brad's response? A note under my windshield wiper that read, Wow, you really need hobbies or therapy or both. I laughed, out loud, not nervously, not sarcastically, but genuine, maniacal laughter. This was no longer just a feud. This was performance art. This was a duel of wits, and I was determined to win. I escalated further the next morning with Operation Rearview Panic 2. I set up mirrors strategically around my parking spot so that whenever Brad approached, his SUV reflected itself in a dozen confusing angles, making it almost impossible to park without feeling like he was in some surreal funhouse. I hid behind a bush to observe. Brad arrived, slowed down, tilted his head, and then did something I did not anticipate. He got out, circled his car, and stared at the mirrors, and then he rearranged them. He was adapting, he was thinking. He was a formidable opponent. The war was no longer subtle. Neighbors began noticing. Mrs. Patel from Hash 26 started raising an eyebrow when she saw me crouched behind a bush with binoculars, taking notes. Mr. Jenkins, the old retiree from Hash 22, waved politely as he passed, but I swear I saw a twitch and a sudden at his lip like he was silently judging the madness unfolding. I didn't care. Victory, or at least preparation for victory, was all that mattered. But then Brad hit me with something new, something psychological. One morning, I arrived to find my car blocked in. Not with his SUV, not with random items. No, Brad had parked another car. Someone else's car, I'm guessing a friend or relative, strategically in front of mine so I couldn't leave without moving it. A small sticky note said, "Morning, Alex. Thought you might need a challenge. Challenge accepted." I started considering my next level of tactics. No longer could I rely on simple pranks. This was war. I needed clever, borderline genius strategies. I set up decoy cones that led away from my spot. I left faux surveillance cameras. I even considered a fake neighbor complaint hotline sign in front of his car. I was channeling some sinister suburban Sun Tzu energy. The tension reached absurd levels. Brad started leaving small, mysterious items in front of my door. A single glove, a rogue shoe, a half-eaten sandwich. Nothing damaging, nothing overt, but enough to unsettle. And it worked. I found myself checking the peephole multiple times a day, expecting some new act of mischief. By now, the other neighbors were involved whether they wanted to be or not. Rumors started circulating. Is Alex losing it over a parking spot? And Brad's definitely provoking him on purpose. Occasionally, someone would confront me in the hallway, like Mrs. Patel, muttering about civility and patience. I smiled politely and nodded, all the while mentally plotting Operation Confusion Conundrum. I began questioning myself. Was I going too far? Was this obsession healthy? Could I just park elsewhere and save my sanity? But the thought of Brad smugly claiming victory made my stomach churn. No, retreat was not an option. That's when inspiration struck. A cunning, brilliant plan formed, something that involved multiple stages. 1. Mislead Brad. 2. Set psychological traps. 3. Use social pressure from neighbors subtly. 4. Create the ultimate reveal. An undeniable, spectacular victory. I spent nights sketching diagrams on notebook paper, labeling angles, time windows, and contingency plans. I was creating the perfect trap. Every possible move Brad could make was accounted for. I so even mapped the escape routes he might take to avoid embarrassment. Meanwhile, Brad was unknowingly helping me. Every counterprank, every sarcastic note, every subtle sabotage became a piece of my puzzle. His arrogance, his confidence, his smug laughter, it all fed into the final plan. Then came the night of minor chaos that proved I was ready. Brad, probably confident he was winning, attempted a new stunt. He left a single stack of traffic cones in my path with a note. "Consider this an offering of truce." I looked at the cones, looked at the note, and laughed. "Oh, Brad, sweet summer child." I countered immediately. I moved the cones to block his car instead, placed fake tire chalk around his wheels, added a reflective mirror setup so he couldn't see properly, and positioned a small motion sensor light to flash the moment he returned. The next morning, chaos ensued. Brad pulled in, jumped out, tripped over his own cones, froze mid-step as the mirror reflections confused him, and then shrieked when the motion sensor flashed. I watched from my balcony, notebook in hand, documenting every reaction. Perfect. Flawless. Exquisite. Neighbors were peeking now, whispering, probably wondering if I had lost my mind, but I didn't care. History would remember this. My spot journal had reached legendary status, complete with diagrams, maps, reaction charts, and psychological profiles. By the end of this, it's clear. Brad has become an active, clever adversary. Alex has fully embraced psychological warfare, taking creativity to absurd levels. The parking war is now a neighborhood spectacle. Alex questions his sanity but doubles down on the plan. The stage is set for the final chapter. Victory is in sight, but so are potential consequences. The war isn't over, it's about to reach its ultimate climax. And I, Alex, am ready. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, deceptively so. I woke up that morning with the same dread and anticipation I felt before big exams, big presentations, or any event where the universe might humiliate me in front of people I care about. Or in this case, people who are just mildly curious. Brad, my adversary, my nemesis, my self-appointed king of hash 24, was about to learn what happens when you push the wrong neighbor too far. For weeks, my spot journal had been more than a notebook. It was a strategic map, a psychological manual, a blueprint of suburban warfare. Every prank, every retaliation, every note, every confounding object left in the hallway had been cataloged, analyzed, and stored. Every reaction of Brad's had been noted, his smirks, his laughter, his passive-aggressive notes. And now, I was ready to execute the culmination of all that effort. Operation Ultimate Spot Domination. I started the morning with my usual ritual. Coffee in hand, binoculars perched on the balcony railing, notebook open. I surveyed the battlefield. The lot was quiet, deceptively quiet. Brad's SUV gleamed in the early sunlight, parked brazenly in hash 24 as if he owned it outright. I could almost hear him smugly humming in the cabin. The first stage of my master plan was subtle, social manipulation. I knew the other neighbors were already intrigued, some amused, some horrified, all curious. So I orchestrated a little community buzz. A few friendly chats in the hallway, some hints dropped to Mrs. Patel, Mr. Jenkins, and even the young couple in hash 28 who had been giggling at the earlier sticky note antics. Nothing direct, just enough to stir curiosity. Brad seemed confident today, I'd say casually, letting them wonder what that meant. By mid-morning, my psychological traps were ready. Mirrors placed strategically to confuse his approach, small motion sensor lights rigged to startle, and a series of faux parking enforcement signs. But the pièce de résistance was a clever twist involving my ultimate ally, social pressure. I'd set up a subtle arrangement of neighbors casually walking past, all watching, all aware of what was about to happen, but pretending not to. Humans are herd creatures, especially smug humans like Brad. The moment came when Brad, completely unaware of the chaos I had staged, started to pull out of his spot. And that's when I unleashed stage 2, Operation Confusion Cascade. I had arranged a series of cones that created a narrow, absurd obstacle course for his SUV. Small reflective mirrors along the path made it look infinitely longer and more confusing than it was. And strategically placed, harmless prank devices made gentle but startling noises when brushed. Brad entered the obstacle course like a hero in an action film, except he wasn't trained, he didn't have a stunt double, and he had no idea what he was walking or driving into. He paused, tilted his head. Mutters escaped his mouth, words I would later record in my spot journal. What the? Who did this? Neighbors peeked from their windows and balconies, some whispering, some laughing quietly. A small crowd of curious onlookers had formed, drawn to the spectacle. This was perfect. Social pressure amplified the effect exponentially. Brad tried to maneuver his SUV through the chaos. Mirrors reflected cones, cones reflected mirrors, and every step he took triggered motion sensors that blinked lights or beeped quietly. He began to sweat, his confidence visibly crumbling. I stayed hidden, just enough to watch the performance, but close enough to intervene if necessary. And then came the final stroke. A simple, harmless, yet humiliating visual cue. I placed a large, bright orange cone directly in front of his car with a printed note. "Congratulations, Brad. You made it." To humility. He froze. He slowly stepped out, surveyed the chaos, and then did something I hadn't expected. He laughed. But this laugh was different. It wasn't smug, it wasn't confident, it was genuine, almost resigned. Like, he finally understood that maybe he had underestimated me. I stepped out of my hiding spot and called casually, "Need a hand with your parking there, Brad?" He looked at me, scratched the back of his neck, and muttered, okay, you win this round." And just like that, after weeks of passive-aggressive notes, minor sabotage, confetti trails, mirrors, and sensor lights, the war reached its climactic resolution. My parking spot, hash 24, was mine again. And more importantly, my creative strategies had worked. But of course, as with all great battles, there were unexpected consequences. The crowd of neighbors, now fully aware of the suburban war that had been raging unbeknownst to them, started talking. Rumors spread. Did Alex really set up mirrors and motion sensors? I heard there were sticky notes, cones, and confetti. Some were impressed, some amused, some worried about my mental state. Mrs. Patel gave me a cautious smile that read, "Congratulations, but maybe don't quit your day job to become a parking vigilante." Brad, meanwhile, seemed changed. He stopped leaving his SUV in hash 24 entirely. For a few days, he parked elsewhere, and while he occasionally smirked at me in the hallway, there was a newfound respect, or at least acknowledgement, of my ingenuity. Yet, the chaos didn't end entirely. A misplaced motion sensor triggered an alarm at 3 a.m., waking the entire building. A few sticky notes had ended up in the trash chute, causing minor confusion. One neighbor accidentally got glitter in their shoe. All small collateral damage, harmless, but enough to cement my legend in the building. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I realized a few things. 1. Patience is a virtue, especially when your opponent is reckless. 2. Creativity is a weapon, and humor is a shield. 3. Humans are absurd. The smallest conflicts can escalate into theatrical, life-altering experiences. Most importantly, I learned that victory isn't always about crushing your opponent. Sometimes it's about orchestrating a scenario where both parties learn something about rules, respect, boundaries, and maybe about themselves. Weeks later, as I parked my car in hash 24, no traps, no mirrors, no sticky notes, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The war was over. The spot was mine. Brad, for all his smirking and arrogance, had learned a lesson, or at least a version of it. And the neighborhood? Well, they had a story to tell for years. As I shut off my engine and stepped out, I glanced at Brad across the lot, sipping his coffee, parked in a legal spot this time. He gave me a nod, an acknowledgement of the battle fought and lessons learned, and I, Alex, smiled. The spot war had ended, but the absurdity of human life, the chaos, the laughter, and the creative mischief, that would always linger. And maybe, just maybe, I'll leave one tiny sticky note on his door tomorrow, just for old time's sake, because some things are worth remembering. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.